Hi, I'm Bernie Zimmerman, Chair of the Nevada County Historical Landmarks Commission. The commission was created in 1969 by the Board of Supervisors to help preserve and promote Nevada County history. This is our 50th anniversary, and to help commemorate it, we're conducting interviews of people who are closely connected with Nevada County history. Today, I have the honor of talking with Dave Comstock, whom I consider the preeminent local historian. In addition to writing a 3-volume history of the gold rush called the Nevada County Chronicles, Dave has written many other articles about local history and operates Comstock Bonanza Press, which has published over 50 books about local and California history. Dave, welcome. Thanks for joining us. You started your career with a variety of jobs, such as advertising and publishing. What prompted you to begin to focus on Nevada County history?
Well, one thing led to another in my life. And the only thing that's been consistent all the time is it's always had something to do with creating art. Anyway, at a certain point in my life, I was looking for a place where I could go on weekends. I was living in Walnut Creek, or near Walnut Creek, and I wanted some place that I could get to in a reasonable time and have a little cabin, say, and go up and paint pictures. And I wound up coming to Grass Valley for a bunch of reasons that are unimportant here. But I ended up on Rattlesnake Road with a shack. I mean, it was a miserable shack. And I started painting pictures. And it was a wonderful place to paint pictures. I traveled all around the county. There were all these tumble-down houses and tumble-down things. Nevada County had a lively history, but I was coming in at the sort of the tail end of it after having a great revival in the 1930s. All of a sudden, it had its own depression. And so the buildings got boarded up and what have you. Most places, most people don't like to see an old beat-up building or a broken-down barn. But if you're a painter, you love them. And so I started painting pictures. Pretty soon I began to find out what it was I was making pictures of, and I became a historian.
Any particular scenes that you painted stand out in your mind?
Well, I started out, first of all, doing creeks and things. Then I started to go to barns. Pretty soon I was doing schoolhouses. Fortunately, you know, I did the French Corral Schoolhouse before it was completely destroyed. And it made a good-looking painting, but it was not what people in their neighborhood wanted to look at. The Brillo house out there in Chicago Park, where my wife used to take her piano lessons when she was a young girl. Beautiful house, right? Owned by the beer wagons. And the next thing you know, they straightened out the highway along there and took out the building. It was gone. I painted a picture of what was the Tivoli Hotel on Sacramento Street in Nevada City. And it had been vacant for a long time, shut down. They finally had sold it to somebody who was in escrow. I painted it, and the next day it burned to the ground. And
no
so,
arson charges filed.
No arson charges, but I began to see I had better hurry up.
Now, you were on the Historical Landmarks Commission for many years, and I understand that there was about the time that you arrived, there was a controversy over the freeway coming through town, and that was really involved in the creation of the Landmarks Commission. So what can you tell us about that?
Well, I can tell you some things, and other things I have to keep quiet about. But basically, the freeway coming through town had a lot of supporters and it had a lot of opponents right from the very beginning, because it was going to split the town. because the logical place to put it was down through a canyon. It had always been a canyon, but it was now going to become a very deep canyon. And a lot of buildings would get torn down, and the question was which buildings would get torn down. And there were two groups of thought. There were two groups in town. One group was led by Sally Lewis, and she had already become involved with a lot of artists and musicians and performers in the old Nevada Theater. At that point, it was a rundown movie theater, and they wanted to restore it so it looked like the original theater that had been built there back in the 1860s. The first event that was held in that theater was a hurry-up memorial service for Abraham Lincoln, who had just been assassinated. And they were in the process of restoring this, and a different group of people, the people who were managing the town, that were running the mayor and the city council, were interested in hanging on to certain buildings, not because of their historical significance, but because of their value or their lack of value. And so they were trying to choose buildings that would be wiped out, that would benefit them. Sally was wanting to get rid of buildings that had no historical significance. Anyway, she caught on to the fact that if you made landmark stuff, you could get people excited about them, and they'd say, we got to protect that thing. And so she started working with Sacramento, and she outfoxed them. She was a tough lady, and she outfoxed them and saved several buildings there. And this led to her to decide to create a historical landmarks commission, because the folks in Sacramento said, this is the way you do it, and you can keep on putting up on these buildings forever. And so that's how it all started.
Well, she was certainly successful in her restoring and landmarking the Nevada Theater, which is now on the National Register and so on. She did a lot of interesting things to make that happen. Maybe you could tell us about some of them.
Well, one of the things was that she looked into what her opponents were saying and doing, and she would go down to Sacramento and talk to them down there and say, how can we outwit these people? And so she began to get a lot of allies down in Sacramento. Now, the whole idea of the freeway, first of all, was kind of a fantastic one anyway. I mean, the idea of a freeway connecting two towns that were 4 miles apart was a crazy idea. A lot of people couldn't figure it out, and the whole idea was there were a group of people in Sacramento wanted to build freeways all over California, but they couldn't get support for them all. And so they decided if they could build this freeway there that wasn't connected to any other freeway, that they could get people to say, hey, that freeway ought to go all the way to Truckee, or ought to go all the way to Marysville, or ought to go all the way somewhere else. And anyway, it didn't happen. We'd have some wider roads to go to those places now, but not what you call a freeway.
So we have a lot to thank Sally for.
Oh, Sally was an incredible woman that changed. She and people like Osborne and Woods and these other folks that came along that saved this building here and transformed it, did marvelous things. They were, oftentimes you could be critical about how they did things, but we can be really thankful that they did them, because what they recognized, among other things, is that the only thing that after you could no longer mine for gold, there was no particular reason to come up here except for the place was beautiful. And so if you could build on a tourist market and sell things and show things to tourists, maybe you could make a go of it. And it's proved to be true. But it took a combination of all these different kinds of people sometimes infighting and everything else, but working something out that no entrepreneur would come in from New York or LA or something and do it.
Now, you mentioned this building, so that everyone is clear. We're sitting in the Miners Foundry, which is both a county and a state landmark. Can you tell us something about the historical significance of the Miners Foundry?
All right, a foundry is a place that basically, it's like a big machine shop, and it makes things out of metal. It cuts things up, it builds things up, it melts things, it does really tough work. Normally you would only have this in a big industrial city. San Francisco had foundries. The mining industry, and as it developed and did hydraulic mining and underground mining and all, needed more and more new equipment, and much of it had to be invented because some of these things had never been done before. Had to be invented and reinvented and what have you. Needed a place to do. The roads were terrible up here. Well, they're still terrible up here when you don't spend money on them.
Except, of course, for the freeway.
That's right, but they have to spend a lot of money on the freeway, too. Look at big chunks of the freeway disappear. The same thing was happening back then. Roads disappear. And so, as a consequence, it became necessary to have a place that was closer than San Francisco, where you could have these things done in a reasonable time. You wouldn't have to haul them all over the place, and the people that are inventing the things could come in and make last-minute changes. And so there has been a foundry on this street since the very beginning. The original foundry was 1 block north of here, and it burned down, and they built this one here, and it's essentially been here ever since, and it's been making different products over time as were needed as each decade came along and each century came along. But nobody ever imagined until these artists came along that this big machine shop could be turned into a place where you put on plays and dances and choral things. Just auctions, parties. It's sort of unbelievable, and it's a place that you have to visit.
This was originally, I understand it, Allen's machine shop, and it became, of course, well associated with the Pelton wheel. And maybe you can tell us a little bit about the Pelton wheel and its significance in Nevada County history.
Well, Lester Pelton invented the Pelton wheel up in Camptonville. But he had to come down here in a place like this to build it, to have somebody that knew how to shape this thing. Eventually they were building them in San Francisco, but here was a place for its early years. This is where they developed it. The Pelton wheel is so good. It's such a powerful kind of a water wheel that was so better than everything else that had been done. The PG&E still uses them in hydraulic plants. And if PG&E goes out of business tomorrow, and maybe it will, there will be a successor who will go right on using those Pelton wheels because you can't beat them.
All right, let's go back to talk a little bit about the Landmarks Commission. After the Landmarks Commission decided to create a guide to all the historical landmarks in Nevada County. How did that come about?
Well, originally, before I was on the Landmarks Commission, they kept kind of a scrapbook in which they kept information about landmarks that they did, and they would have pictures of it, and they'd have notes of just the data for their own personal information, for their own files. And in the 1990s, in our discussions at Landmark Commission, we would talk about what kinds of things we could do to help scientists to get people to know about these things. And this is when we came up with the idea of a catalog. So the first thing we thought about, we put together was a catalog, but it was just a 8.5 by 11 black and white thing. and it listed each landmark, and it was a description of it, how it came to be. And I persuaded the Historical Society to publish it. At that time, I was in charge of books, the book department at the Society, and so we started putting that together and selling it. But a number of the members on the commission, especially Charlie Jacobs, who was a kid who grew up here and in Grass Valley, had long roots in the fire department and elsewhere, and his mother was very active from the beginning on the Landmarks Commission. And he kept saying, we got to do a better one than this. We got to have one that's got pictures in it. We got to have one that's got, that is a real book, and people can carry it around in their glove compartment. And so what we finally were able to do was get some seed money from the county. And the county, has, in its devious way, managed to persuade the library to take it out of their budget. And so they gave us several $1,000s seed money to do this. We eventually paid them back for all the money. And we started producing this thing. And we would go out and at Christmas time and in front of Kmart and sell the books at the door of Kmart. And so we published a second edition a few years later. Now we have, since Bernie took over as chairman, he's developed an ebook, and we have online directions and what have you. But it looks like maybe we're going to also do a printed book again, because there seems to be a demand for a printed book, a thing that especially people who aren't adept with digital devices. And so anyway.
This thing that Dave keeps talking about is called Exploring Nevada County. And it is a guide to the over 200 historical landmarks in the county. Do you have any favorites among all those landmarks?
No, it's like trying to pick your favorite kid.
All right. Let me ask you this. You've talked a lot about Sally Lewis. Are there any other interesting local characters that you've run into in the half century you lived up here?
Oh, I mean, the place is full of them. But Lyle White is one that I like to think about, because several years ago an attempt was made to use Lyle White as an excuse for reopening a mine out at near U-Bet and Red Dog. They'd been trying to get this mine open for years.
You're talking about the Blue Lead?
Yeah, it was the Blue Lead mine. And they had a lawyer that came up with a scheme that indicated that this mine had never gone out of business, that had been going continuously, so therefore it was grandfathered in, and they could just go on with it. And the basis for that was supposedly Lyle White was running this mine for years out there. And when I heard about that, I said, that's crazy. Lyle White wasn't a miner. Lyle White was a historian. He worked at the Searles Library, did all kind of research, was a wonderful guy for digging up stuff about landmarks and what have you. But the one thing that nobody could answer, if he wasn't a miner and he did this volunteer work, but what did he do for a living? And nobody seemed to remember. And he didn't. And I finally got the idea. I went and did some research, and I found some stuff on the internet, found out about his family, and found out he came back from a family back in the East that was in the newspaper business. And they were a big family, and they were running a bunch of newspapers. And I said, I'll bet you that he was in the newspaper business. And there was one guy that would know the answer. Bob Wyckoff, another one of these people that we know all about, that got involved with history and what have you. And the trouble was, right at that point, and they were having hearings, Bob Wyckoff was in Hawaii. And so the minute he got back from Hawaii, I said, tell me, quick, what did Lyle White do? What do you do for a living? Oh, he says, he was a typesetter at the Union newspaper in Grass Valley. And so I went and testified before the commission that this guy couldn't possibly be running a mine and working at the newspaper every day, and that put an end to that.
Lyle White was also, if I remember correctly, very instrumental in preserving some of the historic cemeteries in the area. And in fact, isn't he buried in one of them? Isn't he in the Red Dog Cemetery?
I wouldn't want to bet on it, but he certainly, he restored the cemetery and eventually became head of the cemetery district. The cemetery people in the county didn't even know where the cemetery was. He had to show them where it was. And this is, you know, historians do serious stuff. I've always said that there really is nothing that exists that isn't history. The future doesn't exist because we haven't got there yet. And, you know, right now, what we're doing is we're making this video. And as soon as we get through talking, it's history.
Well, Dave, thank you very much for doing this interview and creating this bit of history. For folks watching, you can order the paperback version of Exploring Nevada County from Amazon or from Comstock Bonanza Press, or you can get it at many local stores and museums. You can order the electronic version from Amazon or from iBooks.